Hi, welcome to our home bar. Welcome to our YouTube channel, Wise Whiskey. I'm Tony, and today we're going to do 5 whiskey cocktails. Now, as you can tell, I've got a pretty big whiskey bar set up at home, but we also have a full bar set up. And I did spend some time as a bartender in my younger days. Now, I really was a bartender before the pre-prohibition craze came and the classic cocktails came back. So this isn't necessarily the type of bartending that I was doing. But once you learn how to make drinks and understand flavors, you start to learn classic recipes. It's pretty easy to pick up on the ratios and how it goes. It just takes a little bit of time. But I'm going to show you mostly classic cocktails today, and one cocktail I did come up with. A big thing for home bartending is invest as much time and energy as you want so that you're still enjoying it. You know, similar to with my whiskey videos so far, how I've talked about it's about understanding and enjoying and having fun with it. And the idea is it to be a little educational so that you can feel more comfortable getting out there and trying things. That's how I want it to be with home bartending as well. You know, for instance, I don't keep fresh oranges because we don't eat them very much. And so if I try to keep fresh oranges to garnish drinks with, the oranges get thrown away. And that's just a huge waste. So you're going to see some times where like maybe I garnish it a little differently than I did if I was working behind a bar. Or I might use slightly different flavor profile or something. That's just personal preference because I'm making it for me here at home or because I don't want to have to keep everything on hand it would take to do that. So we'll talk about that as we make the drinks. The first drink we're going to talk about, is probably the classic at this point, and that's the Old Fashioned. So as I mentioned, we don't keep oranges around for garnishing, but an expressed orange peel does add a lot to an Old Fashioned. So what I like to do is start with a dash of orange bitters. That's going to help give a little bit of that citrus that you would get from the expressed orange, help balance the drink, but without having to worry about having fresh oranges around. And then we want to do a couple really good dashes of Angostura bitters because those are kind of the star of a classic old fashioned. Now, I don't like to add simple syrup to my old fashions, but I do want them to be balanced and sweet and have a little bit more character going on than just whiskey and Angostura. So I'm going to drop a Luxardo cherry in there, and then I'm going to get like half, 3/4 of a bar spoon of the syrup from the cherries. I'm going to add that as well. And then whenever you're making these, it's your choice between rye or bourbon. I've got my bourbon here. Buffalo Trace is what we use as our well bourbon. I've also using Sazerac rye right now. I have a video out there about values in bourbon where we talk about different wells you can use. And this is 2 ounces of bourbon. Now I'm doing 2 1-ounce pours because I'm going to use this jigger back to back for several drinks. And I don't want to use the 2-ounce one and make a mess in that end and then flip the end over for these other drinks. Now again, talking about the difference in restaurants behind a bar. A lot of times at a restaurant, you'll see them pour an old fashioned into a big mixing glass, stir in there, then use a julep strainer, which is like the big spoon with the bigger hole strainer to strain over a cube of ice. At home, that's extra dishes to clean. And I'm not making a ton of these. I'm just going to mix it right here in the glass. So we want to use our bar spoon and just do a good thorough stir, 20 to 30 seconds. We want to get everything mixed together and blended well. And we want to get a little bit of dilution, but not a ton. Now again, a lot of old fashions I get are just taste like whiskey and nothing else, or taste like Ango and nothing else. It is a cocktail. And it is spirit forward, but it's still a cocktail. So I like mine to have a little bit of that citrus kick, some sweetness behind it, like with the cherry, but overall a good, nice mix. Should still be spirit forward, but with a little bit of evolution and complexity to it. Nice bourbon, some spice, some citrus, a little bit of cherry sweetness, just enough dilution and things added that doesn't feel like I'm sipping on a whiskey neat, and that is chilled. And that to me is a great old fashioned. So that is whiskey cocktail number 1. Now the next one we're going to make is another classic and another spirit forward drink, but with a really different flavor profile. Also, I'm using these large ice cubes for my spirit forward cocktails. If you can get a close look at these, I'm not using clear ice. I'm not buying fancy ice. I got a cheap mold that makes cubes on Amazon. I fill it up with water and freeze it. This is one of those times where I do a lot of things very specific and I try to have really high-end ingredients. but I could honestly give a shit less if my ice is clear at my home bar. And I don't think anyone's going to judge you if you're making great cocktails and your ice is a little cloudy looking. However, there are tutorials and plenty of things online if you want to try to figure out clear ice at home. And there are different places you can buy it from if you want to have good craft ice for cocktails. So this is a classic cocktail from the Rat Pack era. So Sinatra and his friends were known for drinking these. This is going to be called a Rusty Nail. I think this is a drink that's going to come back into fashion at some point because it's really easy and it's really good. The star to a Rusty Nail is Drambuie, which is a liqueur made in Scotland on the Isle of Skye, which is where Talisker is distilled. And it's going to be based with Scotch whiskey, and then it's got honey, Scottish heather honey, herbs and spices added to it. It is 40%, so it's the same proof as like base well liquor typically is. So it's a little higher proof than a lot of liqueurs are. But what we want to do is find our jigger, and we're going to do 3/4 of an ounce of Drambuie. And then we are going to do 2 ounces of scotch. And when I am making scotch cocktails, for the most part, I prefer to use Naked Malt. This is a whiskey I've brought up a couple times in prior videos, but great, well scotch. It's blended malt, sherry forward. So it's going to bring some fruit and spice to it. And when you blend that with the kind of honey, sweet, spicy Drambuie, they go really great together. Now with this drink, the flavor profile really comes from these 2 ingredients. The bitters that I'm going to add at the end are really for aroma more than anything else and just a touch of flavor. It's not like the old fashioned where Angostura bitters is such a key part. So I'm going to go ahead and stir now before I put my bitters in. A little bit smaller glass, so I lost a little bit there. Sure would hate to be the sucker that's got to clean all this up after. So we've got a good stir going on. Our ingredients should be incorporated. Our ice is starting to be a little smoother, so it's diluted a little bit. So we should be good to go there. I am going to lightly drop 1 drop of orange bitters right on the ice cube there. And I'm going to lightly drop 1 drop of Angostura bitter on the ice cube there. Again, really for aroma more than anything else. I am not going to stir that again. And I'm also not I don't garnish with a lot of fruit, again, because of the waste thing. And I don't think this needs the sweetness of a cherry added to it. It's already a pretty sweet drink. Oh, man. To be 100% honest with you, it's kind of funny. As much as I love to sip on neat whiskey, when I go for cocktails, I tend to go for fruitier, richer cocktails with a lot going on. This is one of the few spirit forward ones that I really love. There's just a little bit of spice, some fruit, some honey. It's got just enough going for it that it almost doesn't taste like a spirit forward cocktail. It almost tastes like there's some fruit or some other things added to it. It's really refreshing, really nice. And it's just you could see why it was popular. And like I said, I think this is one of those drinks that might start making a comeback because it is very easy, not overly expensive, and it's just a really tasty drink. So that is the Rusty Nail. Now next, we're going to go to our first shaking cocktail. And this is actually one of my all-time favorite drinks. If I'm going to a new cocktail bar, if I'm somewhere where I can tell they make good drinks, but nothing on the menu really jumps out at me, this is kind of my go-to happy hour order. And that's a Gold Rush. So this is a modern classic. I believe it came about in the early 2000s. And it's a 3-ingredient drink. So the first ingredient is going to be honey syrup. Now, I make my own honey syrup. It could not be easier. It's 3 parts honey to 1 part hot water. So let's say you're going to do 3/4 of a cup of honey. You add 1/4 cup of it doesn't even need to be boiling water. It just needs to be really hot water. And you add that to your honey. You stir it up till it's thin and you bottle it and you're good to go. When you add that water in there and loosen it up, What happens is it's easier to pour and measure because you can see it's thinner and loose, but also when it hits cold, it doesn't coagulate like typical honey. So it just allows it to mix better. But you do that 3-to-1 ratio, the honey flavor is still there, and it's shelf stable still. So this will last in your fridge forever. So when we do cocktails and we're shaking in particular, we want to make sure we start with our cheapest ingredients and work our way up. So we're going to do 3/4 of an ounce of honey. Now there are a lot of recipes where this probably calls for 1/2 ounce of honey syrup and then 1 ounce of lemon juice. I have found that I really like the honey to shine through and for it not to be quite as tart. So I do 3/4 of an ounce of honey to 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. And one of the reasons that I use Buffalo Trace as my well whiskey is because I think in particular that Buffalo Trace makes a fantastic Gold Rush. And like I said, this is one of my go-to cocktails, particularly in warmer weather, but I think it's good all the time. So we've got 3/4 ounce honey, 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice, and we're gonna do 2 ounces of bourbon. Again, we're using our well Buffalo Trace. This is all that this drink takes. Very simple. I am going to serve it over Pebble Ice. I love cocktails on Pebble Ice. I go to Sonic. I buy Sonic Ice. I keep a bag or 2 of it in the freezer here. Looks like there's just a touch of water in here because I've been letting this sit for a second. And since I'm bartending at home and since it's for me, I can just drink that right out of there. I am going to put some regular ice to shake it. You want to do about a 10-second shake on this, just to get a little bit of dilution and make sure everything's mixed well and chilled really well. We're going to use our strainer. Because I'm serving this on Pebble Ice, I'm not worried about a little bit of ice chips in there, so I'm not going to worry about straining it as well through the fine strainer. Like I said, you get some of the Buffalo Trace. It's a little tart. It's a little honey. It's a little that kind of cherry cola from the bourbon. It's just a really nice, refreshing drink. Now look, if you like things a little more tart or a little less sweet, do 1 ounce of lemon, do 1/2 ounce of honey, and you'll probably be happy with it. But this is really where I like mine to be. That is one of those drinks that when you have it, it's kind of wild to think that not that long ago, it didn't exist because the flavors just work. It just kind of seems like something that's always been there. So next, since we finished our Gold Rush, one more sip because I do love those. Next, we're going to make kind of a variation on this. This is going to be Scotch based, but it is going to be kind of lemon and honey as well. This is another modern classic. This is going to be a penicillin. So we're going to have some similar components with a little extra complexity, a little bit more going on. So we got our glass of Pebble Ice here. We are going to start with, instead of honey, we're going to start with honey ginger syrup. I take basically the same thing as the last one. You're going to do 3 parts honey to 1 part water. So let's say 3/4 cups of honey. Put it on the stove over low heat. Add in 1/4 cup of water. Stir it till it's loose. Get it to the consistency you want. And then put some ginger in there. Let it sit and steep on the stove for a while. You can turn the heat off once you get it where you want it as far as the consistency. Put the ginger in there and let it sit for a while. And then when you bottle it, I always leave the ginger in there. And it's just going to be ginger infused honey syrup. It's actually really simple. So you can use fresh ginger. We have these, I had never seen these till I got married, but my wife was using this brand. It's pre-frozen, like crushed garlic and crushed ginger, and they freeze them and almost looks like a pack of pills. And each pod has like a little bulb of crushed ginger. And so I just take one of those and throw it into my syrup and use that. But you can use some fresh ginger as well. And really taste it after it sits for a while and see if you think it needs more ginger. I would say, remember, you can always add more ginger. You can't take ginger out of it. So 3/4 of an ounce of ginger honey syrup, 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice. And this is the classic ratio for a penicillin, which is actually really similar to my preferred Buffalo Trace Gold Rush ratio. We're going to do 2 ounces of scotch. Again, I'm going to use my Naked Malt for this one. 2 ounces of Naked Malt. Okay. We are going to shake this. First, we're going to put ice in it. Tricked all of y'all. Just seeing if you're paying attention at home. 10-second shake. Use our strainer. Now this is one where typically you do a toothpick with crystallized candied ginger on it. I am out at the moment. That is one of the garnishes I keep because candied ginger can stay good forever. So I do normally have it, I just don't today. And then just take one of your really good smoky Islay whiskeys, and we're gonna do just 1/4 of an ounce of smoky whiskey, float it right there on top. And that is a modern classic penicillin. You get the refreshment and the honey and the lemon of a Gold Rush. There's some spice and fruit in there that you don't get from the bourbon because of the sherried whiskey. That little bit of ginger spice is really nice. If anything, my ginger honey syrup is maybe a little under infused with the ginger this go around. And then the smokiness from that little bit of Islay whiskey that you put on top, that Islay Scotch, just really balances out and rounds it out. Unique, complex, but still refreshing and very accessible. So, last but not least, this is an original cocktail I made. I love tiki cocktails, been to a couple of really great tiki bars, and this is one that I kind of created. So we are going to start, this is a shaking cocktail. We are going to start with a dash of Angostura bitters and a dash of tiki bitters. These are the El Immaculée tiki bitters from Bittermans. I absolutely love these things. And so we're going to do a few drops of that in there. Okay. This calls for a 1/2 ounce of lime. So we're going to get us a lime real quick. 1/2 ounce of lime. Whoops. I just spilled some of that out of there. All right. 1/2 ounce of lime. We're going to do a full ounce of pineapple juice. A 1/2 ounce of orgeat, which is a almond syrup. I make kind of a cheap version. So I do 2-to-1 sugar to almond milk. So say, if you're going to do a 1/2 cup of almond milk, if you're making a pretty big batch, you do a half cup of almond milk to a cup of sugar, warm that up till it's dissolved. Then you do a couple drops of orange blossom water, which is just I think it's like $5 for a bottle, and you only ever use it a couple drops at a time and it'll last forever. And like 3 drops of almond extract. I think it makes a great shelf-stable orgeat that's totally usable for at home. But there are some great ones on the market. Liber & Co., Liber. Liber & Co. is a great brand of cocktail syrups made in Austin. They have an online portal you can order from, and they're available at Total Wine and some retailers. But they make great stuff. But I make my own orgeat. This is definitely a cheaper I don't think you'll find a version quite like this online from anybody else. It's definitely kind of cutting a couple corners, but I love orgeat drinks, and I think that what I make works totally fine for that. So I'm going to do a ½ ounce of this. Whenever you mix syrups in that aren't like the honey syrup, which is a little looser, I like to step it with something else on top of it so that you can kind of make sure you're getting all of that syrup out of there, and then make sure syrup is not your last ingredient so that whatever else you pour after rinses that off. So I'm also going to use a ½ ounce of Velvet Falernum. And then this does call for 2 ounces of bourbon. So we are going to do 2 ounces of bourbon. If I were making this at a tiki bar, I would probably garnish it with like an orchid flower. But I'm not here making cocktail content every day, and I'm not here making cocktails at home every day. And there's no way that those orchid flowers would last very long here. So we're going to go garnish free and just enjoy the lovely beverage. So I'm going to do a good shake on this. This is served up, which means no ice in the glass. So we're going to shake this closer to 15 seconds. And because we're serving this up, we also don't want any ice chips in it. So we're going to use our strainer, but we're also going to pour through a fine mesh. So with this, you're going to get that little almond note from the orgeat. The Velvet Falernum is sweet and spicy. The Ango and Tiki bitters have some nice spice notes as well. Pineapple and lime give you that nice citrus kick. Not a lot of tiki drinks are bourbon based. So you do get like a little bit of oak and some interesting notes in there from having a bourbon base. And like I said, in a tiki bar, you would definitely want to dress this up as a garnish with some orchid flowers or something neat. But for home, I'm just worried that it tastes good. So let's give it a shot. Haven't made this one in a while. Yeah. Kind of like a painkiller or a Mai Tai. There's some, some flavors of both. But with that bourbon base, it just has a little bit more oomph to it. And just a slightly different flavor profile than most tiki drinks. I love this cocktail. Really proud of this one. This is probably one of the better recipes I've come up with, I think. So this is the Kin Tiki Sour. Tony Wise Original. And that has been my 5 whiskey cocktails you can make at home. Old Fashioned, Rusty Nail, Gold Rush, Penicillin, and the Kin Tiki. As always, guys, please drink responsibly, drink respectfully, but most of all, have fun doing it. If you enjoyed this, please leave a comment and let me know. Like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want us to be able to keep doing what we're doing. Thank you so much for joining me today. Cheers.